Now let's talk about AsyncImage, a wonderful addition to Swift UI. And the use case for it is like our appetizers, right? We are downloading an image for our cell here. Well, to refresh your memory, here I am in the appetizer list cell, and we wrote this appetizer remote image. Remember that? If I command click on it, we can go to the definition here, jump to that, and you see we had this whole like image loader, remote image, appetizer remote image. It was kind of this confusing like dance we had to do to get this working. Well, all this gets handled, I shouldn't say all of this because there are some pros and cons. We'll talk about it at the end. But most of this gets handled in AsyncImage for us. Again, real great stuff. So back to appetizer list cell. Here I'm going to comment out appetizer remote image. That's what we had initially. And now I'm going to type AsyncImage, right? You see it right there. And if I do the initializer, you see we get a couple different ones here. So we have just a URL, we have URL content and placeholder. So the content allows us to tweak the image like we want, right? We want it to fit in our cell. We want the corner radius on our image, etc. And then this one allows us to put a placeholder, which is also what we want because that's what we were using before. So the URL I can pass in is the appetizer image URL. And the nice thing, you'll notice this isn't optional because what's going to happen is if this URL fails, like if the URL returns nil, it's just going to show the placeholder. That's already all built in. So we don't have to like worry about unwrapping optionals. I can't even remember if our appetizer.image URL is an optional. I guess we'll see. Appetizer.image URL. No, that was not an optional, but hey, it doesn't matter. So the content, this is what happens, as you can see, when we get back an image. So if it downloads it and everything's great, like we got a good image, we need to show an image here. If not, we show our placeholder. So this is the UI image, so we can just do image right there. And then below it, right, we do .resizable. Remember, this was abstracted away, I believe, in our appetizer remote image here. Yes, we did image.resizable, right? So we abstracted that away, but we're actually going to do that here now because we're not using our abstraction anymore. And then we'll just do the rest of our modifiers that we had up here, right? We had .aspect ratio. So I guess I just did content mode there. .fit, .frame of 120 by 90. We don't need an alignment, and then corner radius of 8. Cool, now we need to basically do the same thing for our placeholder, except our placeholder is image, and we want name, not system name. You could use an SF symbol like if you wanted, but we have our custom like placeholder, remember? So we want image named, where's that at? I guess it's right here, we don't need that, but I can delete the bundle here. Initializers, so many of them in SwiftUI. But what is the placeholder image name we had? I'm going to go back to our assets here, food placeholder, right? There it is. So I'm going to click on that, copy that, go back to our appetizer list cell, paste that in there. And then now I need to give it these same modifiers if I want it to look the same. Maybe there's a case where you want your placeholder to be of different dimensions, different sizes than your actual image. You know, I'm sure that's a case. That's why you have this flexibility. But for us, it is exactly the same. Now, I'm not going to do this in the video. Let me do a Command B real quick. I hate seeing errors. Okay, what is going on? Oh, that's what's going on. This takes a URL. I pass it in a string. So if I Command click on image URL, jump to definition, you can see our image URL is a string. But AsyncImage takes in an actual URL. So let me delete this, and we need a URL. You can initialize a URL from a string, and the string we'll pass in is appetizer.image URL. Do a Command B. Now, normally this returns an optional, and we either have to give it a default value or force unwrap it. But like I said a little bit ago, AsyncImage takes in an optional URL. So if this URL fails, it's just going to show the placeholder. So that's super nice. All right, Command B. No errors? Okay, cool. Good to go. So let me run through this one more time, right? AsyncImage is built in. It's going to try to download the image from the URL that we pass in. If that image fails, or while it's downloading, it's going to show the placeholder, which we set here. Once the download is complete, and is successful with an image, it's going to show the image, and then we added our modifiers, which again are the same. Now, let's actually resume the preview. We should see our placeholder here, I believe. Yep, there's our placeholder. What I'm not going to do in this video, but we did in a previous video, so if you want to take that on as a challenge, go ahead. As you can see, maybe we have this as a custom modifier, right? We refactor these away, so instead of adding the same modifiers to both things, we say maybe this is a list cell image style or something like that, right? But feel free to take that as a challenge. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I believe we did this a couple videos ago where we refactored our AP button to use the standard like button style. Now let's run this to make sure it works, and then I'll talk about the con to using this method versus the method we were using. Yep, there you go. You saw the placeholders for a second while they were loading, and then here they are. Right? Here's all of our image. Now, the downside to AsyncImage is that you'll notice in our remote image, well, I guess that would be in our network manager, right? Where we did this, where we downloaded the image. We have a cache, right? We're caching the images. And if we, we have that image in the cache, we're not downloading it again, right? We already have that image. Well, the bad thing about AsyncImage is it doesn't cache for you. So if caching is important to you, I wouldn't use AsyncImage. I would use our old method that we did before. Now let me expand on that if caching is important to you. So for our app, right, let me pull it back up. Right, we have like 5 images. You can't really scroll that far. I would say maybe we're borderline. But if you had a list of 1,000 things and as you were scrolling every time, like nothing was caching, absolutely you want caching. I think we're kind of on the limit to where like caching's not a big deal because we don't have that many items. Like there's not that many being re-downloaded. But again, this is very situational on your product. If you're downloading a bunch of stuff and it's insanely inefficient, absolutely cache it. If you only have a couple and maybe you're not like re-downloading much, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Again, pros and cons that you got to weigh for your own project, your own product, your own team, that kind of stuff. But I did want to point out that is the downside of using AsyncImage, even though it's super simple, right? And we didn't have to write all this kind of convoluted, right? We had an image loader, a remote image, an appetizer remote image, kind of convoluted. That all gets abstracted away into just this. And then again, once we abstract away our modifiers, like this is really simple, just a couple lines of code. But again, the downside, it doesn't cache. So that's how you use it. Use it accordingly in your future projects now that you know the pros and cons and how to do it.